Hey everybody, thank you for visiting my channel and being a subscriber. Um, the other day I was meditating on some recent interactions with individuals, I'll say. I've been here just over 3 years, 3.5 years now, and I have had experiences with people that I never, ever, ever imagined experiencing in the United States. And I thought, this might be an appropriate thing to share for both people that are interested in visiting Costa Rica or moving here. That would have been very cool for for me to see ahead of time before moving here, just to expect the types of characters I would experience. So this section, I'm going to have a playlist on my YouTube channel that's called Characters of Costa Rica, and I'm not going to go over every single person I've met because so many, a high percentage, a majority of the people I know and have communicated with and interacted with have been very good people, kind people. But I think as a result of certain socio-economic or kind of maybe international tourism influences, there's some unique characters that develop in Costa Rica. Specifically, like I was from the metropolitan area, New York City, which was a melting pot of the world, and you experience all types of unique personalities. But even after 30-something years in that area and traveling a lot, within a few months of living in Costa Rica, I experienced such unique and diverse personalities that I had never encountered even a percentage of, let's say, the degree of expression and uniquity of these people. So, in this new little series on my YouTube channel, just to differentiate myself from the average stuff you see, I'm going to discuss some of these characters that I've met in Costa Rica. Now, I'm not going to use anybody's name. I'm not going to describe physical traits of anybody, but I will describe personality traits, just so you're aware, anybody watching this or anybody visiting Costa Rica, or that the algorithm, of YouTube might show you this video or my channel. So if you're visiting Costa Rica, you can start to have a foundational idea of some of the people you might experience. It's a small percentage of people, but nonetheless, it's like in the United States, for example, there's lots of mass murders and a unique personality that seems to be just in the United States. You don't get these people in other countries. We rarely hear about, school shootings and church shootings and nonsense like this, Super Bowl celebration party shootings, bombs at marathons. You don't hear about this stuff in other countries, so it's very uniquely United States. And similarly, there's some very uniquely Costa Rican alternative abstract personalities, and that's what this series is going to be about. So with no further ado, I'm going to discuss the first one I experienced in my time in Costa Rica, which was wildly unique and strange, and I haven't experienced a person like this since, but it was in my first few weeks, in my first few days, I should say, but let's just say some of these things unfolded over a matter of 3 or 4 weeks living in Jaco, Costa Rica. So when I first arrived to Jaco, and Costa Rica in general, and you can see back in my videos, I was in this very small apartment on the north side of Jaco, which, I had a friend. You guys are very familiar with her, and you'll see her in the video. Kind of find it on Facebook and set me up with this apartment ahead of, getting here. And the dynamic was she actually paid for the first month's rent for me to lock kind of like a deposit on it, so nobody else would take it, and I would have a place to come when I showed up, and it was very nice of her. So now you know that my first month was already paid for, and when I got there, I told the people, hey, I'm looking to buy a house. I may be here 1 month, maybe 2, maybe 3 at the most, but probably not longer than 2, to be honest. They said, that's fine, no problem. I spoke to the son of the building owner, let's say, because there was multiple units in this space, and the family lived in one of the units. So I thought, okay, this is a good situation, and the son spoke English, some of the daughters spoke English, the father seemed to speak a little bit of English as well, but that disappeared very quickly. convenient English, we'll call it. When he needed something or wanted something, he spoke perfect English. When I needed something, he spoke no English. So that's one of the factors that came in. So now I move in, I'm there with my dogs. My first couple of days in Costa Rica, I just wasn't feeling well, like literally nauseous, and I don't know what it was exactly. A lot of people that come to Costa Rica the first time experience something similar. I kind of defined it as a vibrational change in my body from New York City, super high, New Jersey, super stressful area, especially during COVID in 2020. And then I came to a place that was very peaceful and relaxed, and my body just had to adjust. And there could have been a lot of factors to that. I hadn't really eaten in like the 2 days that I was traveling because I was so stressed. And, first time in Costa Rica, first flight internationally at all, flight in general with my dogs, and we were moving, and, I was thinking about the logistics of, all my belongings being shipped here, and where I was going to live, and this and that, and not knowing the language, and how this is all going to work out. So there was a lot of stress, and honestly, I was just probably drinking coffee for like 2-3 days in a row, not really eating, not really hydrating properly. So it hit me, and I had 2 days that I kind of struggled. And Sarah Elena helped me. She grabbed me, some medications, some waters, and just some stuff, coconut water, electrolytes, brought it to the apartment. It was very kind of her in her busy schedule. And the son of this, building owner, let's say, took me out for breakfast, and he went surfing one day, and I kind of went and hung out on the beach and watched him surf, and it started off all fine, and then he was like, hey, going back to San Jose where I live, I just wanted to be here to help you and help my parents kind of get this rental going, because it was a new situation for them. So I was like, okay, no problem. Later that day, I think it was the second or third day, I get a knock on the door, and it was the mother and father kind of welcoming me and saying thank you and this and that. So thank you too. And the mother spoke no English, but the father seemed to speak very good English. And I was like, okay, cool, like, I appreciate it and this and that. And a day later, like that night, I couldn't really get the air conditioning to work, and it was really hot. It was a second-story apartment, so all the heat from the downstairs was coming up, and it was miserable. So I messaged a son, I texted him, I said, hey, the air conditioner's broken, and it seems to be leaking, a lot of water, and I had buckets underneath that I had to keep dumping into the shower, and it didn't seem to be pumping out any cold air. So, like any landlord would do, and you would expect, especially when you've paid some rent already, and you're going to be there for some time, and they have this rental property. He came with a couple of workers, and they fixed the air conditioning. Thank you so much. Okay, great. Things are good. Go to sleep that night, wake up the next morning, and I'm walking out just to go to town. Like, I'm not going to give you too much detail of where this was, because I don't want this person to feel targeted in any way, because hopefully he was just going through a stressful time and this was a character break. But nonetheless, there was kind of like a delusion, and he couldn't snap out of it, and it got worse as days and weeks went on, and I'll explain. So I walked to the beach and went to this great little restaurant that had Wi-Fi, and it was shade, and there was a cool breeze. It was at the north side of Jaco Beach called Claritas, and fantastic. I highly recommend you go there if they're still open. Some things open and close, and they don't last, but I imagine they're still there. And really good place, great people. So I'm there for maybe 2-3 hours using the Wi-Fi, getting things done, having some breakfast, some coffee, and just enjoying, wow, I'm in this beautiful place on the central Pacific coast of, Costa Rica, and I'm finally taking deep breaths, and I'm at peace, and I'm enjoying it. So I go back, and he comes up to me with all these bills, all these electric bills, and all of a sudden now he doesn't speak English, and he said, you have to pay these bills, and he said, necesitas pagar estos. I said, excuse me? I said, can you explain in English? And he goes, it's the electric bill, you have to pay this. And it was like $400. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. I've been here 3 days. Like, how would there be $400 of electric bill? So I'm like, I'm not paying that at the end of the month after I've had my full usage. Give me the bill and I'll pay you the difference from this bill, because obviously this was your bill. And at the end of the month, you'll see how much usage I had of the electricity, and then I will pay you that difference. And he goes, no, you have to pay today. And this was like weird. And I was like, I'm not understanding. Let me communicate with your son. and then we'll figure it out. And his son kind of didn't answer. Maybe he didn't understand the question I was asking, and so I contact a couple other people. I say, hey, is this normal? They're like, no, that's not normal. Like, don't worry about it, kind of. Literally once a day for the next 2 weeks, he was asking me to pay this electric bill. So I kept saying to him, let's go to the electric company, and they'll explain to you how there, because I was able to read it, and this is a brand new country for me, but he was trying to give me the bill for 3 different meters on the property, all tacked into one price. And I was like, this is obviously 3 different units, because there's 3 different numbers, which I know now are Nisei numbers, which are the specific numbers for each meter. I said, so it's not reasonable that I'm paying all of your electric bills for past months that you haven't paid yet. This just doesn't make sense. And then he started to say in perfect English, but we fixed the air conditioning for you. I said, well, that's not an exchange. Like, you're the landlord. You're supposed to have working conditions. You advertise this as having an air conditioning unit, and that's why it was something I rented. And on top of that, the water in the shower didn't work. So that was another issue. Like, it would just trickle out, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to complain. They're obviously having problems. So I would just make the most of the situation. And he was like, but you're using the air conditioning all day, and that's why the bill's so high. I was like, well, no, I'm only using air conditioning when I'm in the apartment, and I turn it on, I turn it off when I need it. So it's not running all day. I don't know what you're talking about, and you wouldn't even have the electric bill yet for that, because that would come out at the end of the month after the usage. And he then started pretending he didn't understand English. So I was like, wow, this is a strange scenario. And so let's fast forward a little bit. It's the end of the month now, and they're saying, you need to pay rent. You need to pay rent. I say, okay, well, listen, I've tried to use the ATM. My credit card and my debit card are not allowing me to use the ATM because I'm in Costa Rica. I can use credit card transactions, but for some reason they're not letting me use the ATM, and I'm trying to get in touch with them, but they haven't gotten back to me as to why, or if I can put a travel notice. I didn't realize all of this stuff. This is brand new for me. So I said, can we do this? Does anybody in your family have PayPal? Because I could just put money in my PayPal account and send it to them. And then it's the same thing. It goes right into their bank account. It's just not cash. The daughters intervene and say, yeah, no problem. Here's my PayPal account. So we send it over. Like, days before the end of the month. Now, I came to Costa Rica on September 11th. I had paid first month's rent. Sarah had paid it for me, I think, on September 1st, somewhere in the first week of September, to book the apartment for me for the month of September. So now it's a few days before October. I hadn't even been there 3 full weeks yet. And I'm willing, and I paid, and I sent them the PayPal. And there's confirmation, everything. I've seen the confirmation on their phone that they received it. September 31st, right? 30th, whatever the last day of September is, 30th, I think, comes around, and it's nighttime, and maybe 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, all the power goes off. So I go outside, I try to see what's going on, see if there's power in other buildings. Like, you know, I hear about power outages all the time in Costa Rica, and we had a few, but never like at night like that, never for this long. It was like 15, 20 minutes. I was like, all right, it's not back on yet. Let me go outside to ask them what's going on. As I step out the front door of this apartment, this guy's on the roof with like tools, and he had just like turned off the electric specifically for the apartment I was in. I was like, what are you doing? At this point, I have my phone in my hand, and he starts yelling. He's belligerent drunk. So I turn the camera on, and I start recording him, because just being in North Jersey, you get psycho people all the time. So the best thing to do is just record it, and then the authorities can deal with it later. So I'm recording him. He's freaking out. He's like, you're not paying rent. You didn't pay the electric for the month. And I was like, we already had this discussion, and I already paid rent, and now I'm like, I have the camera on, but I can show you in my phone, and your daughters can show you that they received the money. Like, you guys have the money. What are you trying to do here? I've already paid for, the next month. That's not even at the end of the month from the first month. That was paid for. So this is paying for a month ahead, and that was done already. And he's just drunk. He must have used the rent money to go buy a bunch of liquor and get wasted and forgot about it, and then was so upset about, not paying his previous electric bills that he felt I was responsible for paying all these bills because I was a gringo and a foreigner, and the pandemic was just there, so they probably didn't have any business or renters for the past 6 months or whatever. So he's like putting this all on me, and I was like, "You're literally crazy, and this is nuts." So I went inside, I messaged the daughters, I was like, "Your father is drunk on the roof, just shut my electric off, I'm calling the police." So they come running upstairs. "Don't call the police, please don't call the police, please don't call the police." Probably because he's had problems with the police before, and this would be like compounded, he's going to get in a lot of trouble. That's an assumption, but based on this person's behavior, I would imagine they have had experiences with the police in a non-positive way. So the daughters are trying to calm me down. "Don't call the police." So the first thing I do is call my attorney, of whom I won't mention, but very intelligent, helpful guy, and he helped me do a lot in my first few months here. Really good guy, sound advice. So I call him, I say, "Hey, this is happening. What rights do I have?" Because he's shut off the electric. He's saying he's kicking me out, and I just paid rent like a day or two ago for the next month. Like, he's already got my money. I have nowhere to go. I got my 2 dogs. It's 9, 10 o'clock at night now. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to go find a place, especially for free. You know what I mean? Because I just paid this money to him. Like, I don't have an extra, whatever it was, $400 to just like throw away. And like, either he's going to give me the money back so I can go rent another place, or like, you tell me what to do. I'm ready to call the police. But now they're saying he's saying he's going to call the police on me, but the daughters are begging to not have police involved. What should I do? And he goes, "You have renters' rights. If you paid the rent, you have proof of that payment. Like, you can call the police, and he's got to stop, and he's going to get in trouble for that." So I explain that to the girls. I say, "Hey, listen, I just spoke to my attorney. He said if we call the police, like, they're going to side with me, and your father's going to get in a lot of trouble for doing this." And they said, we're sorry. So now he begrudgingly goes back and turns the electric back on. Now I'm kind of fuming, and I'm nervous because I'm like, well, they got the keys to the apartment. He could come in the middle of the night and try to kill me. So like, I'm explaining that to the daughters, like, I don't feel safe here anymore. Like, this is crazy. You guys got to refund me this rent. Like, I'm going tomorrow to find a new place to live, and I'm going to barricade this door tonight so he can't get in here. They're like, "Don't worry about him. We'll keep him under control. Calm down. Don't worry about it. We don't want any problems. We know you paid the rent." They showed the proof to the dad. He's still like not believing it. So he was obviously like drunk out of his mind. I don't know if there was any drugs involved, but he just seemed really drunk. And so that happened. Like, this is a real thing that can happen. So what I think was happening was he was so in debt from his own issues, from his own spending, and not monitoring his own financial. And yeah, it's the pandemic, so everybody was struggling, and there was no income, especially in the tourist area. But he was trying to make me pay for everything. Like, literally all the debt that they had, he was trying to make me pay. And then I realized in retrospect, he just wanted to get me to move out. He was trying to do anything he could to get me to move out so they could trick another renter to come in and probably wait a month and do the same exact thing, or maybe trick somebody else into paying past electric bills and all this stuff. So I said, listen, like, the right thing to do would be you guys refund the money on PayPal. I actually, disputed the charge, because I knew the next day I was going to get another place, and that's what we did. And we moved to Playa Hermosa, and it was beautiful. And Cabinas Brisa del Mar, that's where we went. And Brian and Mason were amazing and accommodating and sweet and kind, and they gave me a true experience of what it's like to be in Costa Rica, as I've experienced since. Like, most people are like the humans at Cabinas. They have good hearts, they're open, they're kind, they're willing to negotiate, they're not going to put their drama onto their customers. It doesn't make any sense, and they were just so generous and kind. But long story short, this lunatic is what a small percentage of people here are like, and they act irrationally. They think that they are not responsible for anything they do in life. And obviously their kids are suffering big time and hopefully becoming different types of people and not doing what their parents did. And I know what that's like. I had a great one parent who was a prime example of how to do things, and I had another who was a great example of what not to do in life and how not to treat people and how not to think and interact. So, you know, I get it. Not everybody's perfect, and a lot of times life sends us the teachers we need, both in a good way and in a bad way, so we know what to do and what not to do sometimes. So hopefully these kids took it as, man, we should not be like our father. He's doing all the wrong things and screwing us over and creating drama for our family. But there are people like this in Costa Rica, and you just have to be aware and kind of see the signs. And when you start to see the first signs, like if somebody tries to give you a $400 electric bill on your second day in the rental, well, that's a huge red flag, and you should get out of there and contact your attorney and maybe contact the police and say, hey, listen, this is going on. They're trying to take advantage of me. I don't know how many other people they've done this to, but you should be aware of this person. And then go find another place. If you have to take a loss of a few $100, take the loss and just see it as one of those situations where you invested in knowing who that person was and that type of person, and you won't have to experience that again if you learn the lessons. So this is just one of many over the past 3.5 years, interesting characters and peoples and maybe even scammers that I've experienced that I'm going to start to share with you guys on this channel. I'm not just going to share this with personal conversations with friends now. I'm going to share this publicly with you so you can be aware and not have to go through the same thing again, and notice red flags, and maybe come up with some preliminary paperwork yourself that, like, hey, listen, I'm going to pay rent for the time that I'm here. I'm going to pay the electric bill based on the difference of my impact on your electric bills, because obviously these are shared meters and stuff. And just always have resources in the back of your pocket, like a good attorney or a good translator or family members who do speak your native language that are related to this renter. Make sure that there's levels of protection that you have, because if I didn't have an attorney that I could have called at 9:30 at night and who picked up, I would have felt like I would have been arrested or something and out on the street homeless, and my dogs and I probably would have left that night with whatever bags I had and like slept on the street, which would have been horrible, especially in a new country where I didn't know anything. Now I know that, you know, we could have walked to the beach a couple kilometers or just like hung outside a supermarket, and that's what people do anyway, so there's no problem. Like the security guards might have even looked over me and protected me, and you know, there would have been no issue. But there's always a risk. So that was something that, you know, wasn't even an option for me. I was like, I don't get scared, but I was kind of terrified for my dogs. Like, what are we gonna do? And I remember talking to them and be like, guys, we might have to leave tonight, like they were kids and stuff. And I just felt like, this is a terrible first experience of Costa Rica, and like, why would this guy do this? And I think I even said that to the daughters. I was like, why does your father want people to have a terrible first experience of Costa Rica? Like, that makes no sense, and like, you're almost shaming your country, because I've heard such good things about the kindness of people, and he's being the polar opposite of everything that I expected and that I heard about, and this is terrible. So, you know, I'm doing this video today because I don't see a lot of these things spoken about on YouTube, and I see people complaining in Facebook groups sometimes, but they're not citing examples, whatever reason. They might be scared, or they're just bullshitting, or they failed in some way. But I've surpassed by almost double the failure period of the first 2 years of foreigners, you know, being like, oh, this isn't working, and going back to their home country. I know I'm going to be here forever, and people are reaching out to me on my Facebook and specifically my YouTube for advice about moving here and what to expect, and I always give them the good stuff and the fluffy and like all this amazing, but there is a small percentage of the bad stuff that I don't want to ignore, and I don't want to neglect sharing with people, because if you come here and you experience this, you're going to look at me maybe like, oh, Toby didn't tell us this and he sugarcoated everything. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Here's the, you know, little bit of broken glass on top of the donut that you're eating that you have to be aware of, and cut that piece out and realize, okay, that's over there, that's a piece. 99% of my experiences in Costa Rica are going to be amazing and much better than where I came from, but there's still a small percentage of what we could call crazy people. They're everywhere in the world, and you don't necessarily know how to identify them right away, because when everybody says hello, they look in your eyes and smile for the most part, especially when you're handing them money. So just be aware that, you know, these type of people are out there, and you're going to hear many more examples of characters I've met since living in Costa Rica that aren't necessarily dangerous or harmful, but they're a little bit crazy, and you got to be aware of these people, because it might come back to bite you in the ass one day. And if I didn't have, I guess, the instincts and the connections I had, I would have been in a shitty situation, a really tough situation in my first month, where it actually turned into a blessing, because I found a town of Playa Hermosa, which is a subdivision of Jaco, that I preferred much more. It was much more my energy, much more my vibe, and just overall like a little classier place. And that was something that, I didn't expect. And it kind of kept me on my toes for a couple months until I realized, okay, like Playa Hermosa and Perita is much more like Costa Rica, where Jaco is more like Las Vegas, Miami. So there's a lot of chaos that goes on in people's lives and minds, and that's going to reflect in their character and their developmental psychology. So something to be aware of. If you have any questions or comments, or you want to share your own story below, and you have a video like this, or you just want to write it out, put it in the comments, because it would be good for other people to see. And it's entertaining. Ultimately, this guy was harmless, and he was only harming himself. But at the time, it felt like a very harmful situation to me and my dogs, and I was nervous and I was scared. But my attorney reassured me that I had all the rights, and remember, you have the rights as a renter. As long as you're not doing anything wrong or illegal, and somebody tries to do this to you, you have the right to stay there. And this is something that, if it was a long-term rental, I could have taken this guy to court and probably got awarded money for the inconvenience and the stress and this and that. So renters do have a lot of rights here. It's a country that, earns a lot of its tax revenue on tourism, on people coming here and contributing to the economy. So there's protective measures in place for us. And especially somebody like myself, who had full intention and plans to become an investor here, which I've done since, and I've got a business, and I don't employ people right now because we're not fully opening and functioning, but in the coming years, months even, I'm going to be employing locals and paying their health insurance and really contributing to the economy in a significant way. And if this guy had forced me to, think to myself, Costa Rica sucks and I don't want to stay here, he would have ruined potentially 30, 40, 50 years of tax revenue and job generation for other local people, his neighbors. And the country, needs to, and they do. I don't want to say that, Costa Rican government is not enforcing law upon these people, because I'm sure this guy has gotten himself in many legal situations since and before that, and that's probably why he has this behavior and he can't correct it, because he keeps getting beat up by a system that he's trying to beat up. Good karma brings you good energy. Bad karma brings you bad energy. So I don't imagine he generated some good karma from the situation he tried to put on me. It was just like, he fucked himself. I moved on to a better situation and things have been great since, but along the way I've encountered some characters, and I'll speak about them in further videos. So thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's a longer video, but you got an interesting story, and hopefully if you're planning to visit or move to Costa Rica, you have this in the back of your mind, and if somebody pulls some shiesty stuff on you like this, you know how to react, and you know what resources to use and what rights you have. You do have rights. All right. So in some countries, immigrants don't really have rights. In Costa Rica, they benefit from tourism. It's the number one, if not top 3 industries in the entire country producing their gross national product. Like a majority of their tax revenue, I would imagine, comes from rental properties and Airbnb and tourism. So this is something that they should really be extra focused on, being kind, and that's why I'm grateful that his children realized, like, Dad, you gotta shut the F up. You're ruining our future right now. God forbid this guy ever go on YouTube and speak about you by name. We're screwed, which I won't do, because the children are not responsible for the parents' actions. That's something I've learned in my life, and I would never, ever, ever hold something against a younger generation for something their parents did. Otherwise, we are in this perpetual system, and it's never going to break. You can break the chain, and I hope that his children have recognized Dad's bad behavior and go the opposite way for their businesses in the future. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're not yet, and especially share with people that you know are planning a move to Costa Rica. If you come across this video, hopefully this helps them at least be a little more mindful and aware of how to interact with people, and that a small percentage of situations might end up like this, and that there are people right next door and people right down the street that will give you a much better experience. So find the people that are akin to your soul and your vibration.